Hello everyone, I am Devin Kim, the English instructor of Ivicept, and today I'll be walking you through how to deal with an English A Language and Literature Paper 1. So this particular Paper 1 is from the May 2022 examination session, and we're going to go straight down to text number 2, given that text number 1 has been removed for copyright reasons. So, text 2 is an advertisement that was featured on the Tourism Australia website, and just looking at it, we can tell that it's a predominantly visual source. So we are going to be using our knowledge of visual elements, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we're going to just ignore the textual devices that are being used here as well. Whatever our response is going to be, it will be a mix of these two types of features. And if you have watched my video on Paper 1 tips and strategies, you'll remember that the very first thing you need to do when dealing with a Paper 1 text is to read the guiding question. How are text and image used in this advertisement to promote domestic tourism? As far as guiding questions go, this one is not too hard. It leaves you a lot of room to interpret the following text. So, let's go through step 1, dividing the guiding question into its constituent demands. You'll notice that I have combined text and image into one constituent demand. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned, text and image, you can look at them separately, but in most cases, textual features and visual features are working hand in hand. They complement each other to deliver a message or to help the text achieve its purpose, which is why I have combined them together, binded it together into one guiding question demand. And then, of course, the second guiding question demand would be how this advertisement promotes domestic tourism. You'll notice that each question can be answered separately, and this is what makes the Paper 1 easier to deal with. So, now let's look at what we can actually discuss for this Paper 1 text. So in terms of how text and image are used in this advertisement, I will first start off by mentioning the visual elements within. We have the background image, and that shows us a pretty clear, almost like nearly cloudless sky, and what seems to be a sunset. Already off the bat, I'm going to mention the use of complementary colors. So we have the very deep saturated dark blue here with the very faint orange/pink. So that's a pretty strong, color contrast, visual contrast. And what that does is that it makes the advertisement eye-catching and appealing. I mean, as of now, I'm not too concerned about connecting these ideas with like the second part of that guiding question. I'm just trying to get as many ideas down first, and then later in step 3, that's when I'm going to concern myself about how to connect all of these separate ideas together. So in the foreground, we see a stadium, what looks to be a stadium, and a group of people wearing full body suits, jumpsuits, and they have a lot of gear on them as well. I think it's safe to assume that they will be either bungee jumping or base jumping, looking at like how high up they are and by the gear that they're wearing. So the stadium, the bungee jumping, the gear, all of these elements carry with them like connotations of excitement, maybe even danger. And this I would then connect with the advertising technique of association. So by having these visual elements, this advertisement is trying to get us, to remind us of those sensations of excitement and danger. And that complements the tagline of the advertisement, which features the word adventure. More on that a bit later. When it comes to visual features, we could also talk about the expression that the woman is making here. We can see that she's smiling next to the man next to her, and again, judging by the tagline of the advertisement, we can safely assume that that man is her husband and perhaps the father of the other two people waiting in line. That means we are looking at a family unit. And the fact that we are seeing a family ready to have an adventure and, for all intents and purposes, looking quite excited and eager to do this activity, well, we could say that this creates positive pay thoughts. It is making us feel something good, and that again is persuading viewers of this advertisement to maybe look into domestic tourism, especially if you're Australian. Okay, now let's go into the tagline in depth. Would that rather aftershave or an adventure? The most important part of this tagline is that it uses parallelism when a sentence or clause repeats a grammatical structure. So what parallelism does is that it is used to juxtapose two ideas. They might not necessarily have been antonyms to each other, but through the grammatical parallelism, we understand that these two ideas are now antitheses to one another. So antithesis, that's the term. And in this case, those two words being juxtaposed, the two words being turned into antitheses to one another would be aftershave and adventure. So let's understand what's happening here in a bit more detail. So aftershave, you may or may not be aware of this, but aftershave is it's a very safe choice of gift for fathers, especially on Father's Day, which is also to say that it is also considered boring and unimaginative. At least the advertisement wants to make you think so. And the reason is because aftershave is the antithesis of adventure due to the grammatical parallelism of this advertisement. And now, what does adventure stand for in this context? Well, it is referring to domestic tourism in Australia. And because it is an antithesis of aftershave, we understand that it incites excitement in the audience. Not to mention that adventure is a glittering generality. So that's a rhetorical technique where people use a word or phrase that has unambiguously positive meanings. So, who doesn't like an adventure, right? So by having that word adventure, we understand that yes, you can embark on domestic tourism. Domestic tourism is an adventure, and it's something far more appealing, far more exciting than just simply giving aftershave as a gift to your father, to your husband. You can also note the fact that the tagline is worded as a rhetorical question. So this, again, you could say that it's urging audiences to reflect on what their own fathers or husbands would want as a gift. Again, we're working with the glittering generality, the word adventure here, to better explain what the function that rhetorical question is playing in the context of the advertisement. At the same time, we can note that the use of parallelism also insinuates that adventure, that is, domestic tourism within Australia, is a reasonable alternative to aftershave. In other words, the advertisement is trying to suggest that domestic tourism is as affordable as buying aftershave as well. So again, that's another layer of interpretation that you can bring in when dealing with this particular paper one text. We could also mention the word, the use of the word dad itself. It's very colloquial. We could use the term informal register to talk about that word dad. And what it does is that it builds audience rapport. It doesn't come across as too serious. You can jive with this advertisement. It seems to understand you. And also, instead of would your dad, they just simply wrote would dad rather aftershave or an adventure. So the omission of the determiner, so your or my, suggests that this could be anyone's dad. And again, that helps appeal to familial values, not to mention, it can apply for pretty much everyone. It has that mass appeal. Okay, so we're now going to talk about the ad copy itself. So the other bits of text in this advertisement. Australia, we're living in the best gift shop in the world. That's what this line says. And here we can note the use of the pronoun we right next to Australia. So We is a first person collective pronoun. Again, this is used to establish audience rapport, and it shows that the advertisement is made by Australians for fellow Australians. So we can say that maybe there's a promotion of national identity going on here as well. You can also notice that there's a use of the word best, which is a superlative. And again, that will factor in, helping to evoke a sense of national pride in this advertisement as well. The term gift shop could be considered a metaphor, and in this context, it's a metaphor for the country of Australia. I mean, there are far worse things, to compare a country to than a gift shop, right? And of course, again, given the positive connotations of the word gift shop, I think this again is trying to promote Australia as a country itself. And the word gift can even be argued as to be an extended metaphor or conceit. So gift in this case would refer to tourist destinations and attractions within Australia. The fact that Australia has so much of them, and the fact that this advertisement is trying to get audiences to think of them as gifts, again, shows how it is trying to shape the audience's own perceptions about their own country. We also have this line here, holiday here this year. You can see that here and year are rhyming words. So there's a use of internal rhyme. You can also use the term assonance, the repetition of vowel sounds within a sentence or clause to explain this. And what it does is that it has a mnemonic effect. It helps remember, holiday here this year. The more, effective use of rhymes help people remember. And this is a pretty catchy line. Not to mention that it is also written in bold capitalized font. So we know that this is higher up in the visual hierarchy, and perhaps we can even classify it as a slogan, a short phrase that a company or organization wants to associate with itself. In this case, if this is a slogan, this would be the slogan for Tourism Australia. We can also note the fact that the word here is stylized in cursive font, and it's encased within a map of Australia. So there's that whimsical, playful, feeling going on here as well with that little detail. We can also mention the logo. Okay, so this is a smaller detail. Among the students with whom I have already done this text with, many of them fail to notice or mention this, but this can also provide a very good interpretation of the text if used right. So the logo is simply, it's a logo for Australia. It's a kangaroo jumping with a sun in the background. So the kangaroo, it's a very dynamic, agile creature, and that dynamism, that agility is being conveyed through the blend of organic shapes within that logo. And not to mention the kangaroo is unique to Australia, which means that, you could say that it represents the diversity and vibrancy of the country itself. No, it's a symbol for the country, my bad. And the fact that it is so colorful, we could use that as an interpretation for the diversity and vibrancy of the country. So that's how I would organize all of the features being shown in this particular advertisement. And now for the second half of that guiding question. We've already kind of touched on these ideas, so now I am just bringing them out, extracting them, and then just clearly dividing them so I know what my body paragraph points will be. So this advertisement is definitely appealing to familial values. So it's urging audiences to see domestic tourism as a means of strengthening family relationships. To that, I will also maybe say that this is a problem and benefit advertisement technique being used here, suggesting that, hey, if you want to have better relationships with your family, domestic tourism within Australia is your solution. We can also talk about just the simple visual appeal of the ad, with all the contrasting colors, the background, the connotations of these visual features as well. So all of this together what it does is that it presents tourism within Australia as attractive and exciting. And yeah, we already mentioned the word association. That too is an advertising technique. So we can mention that when discussing the second point. And lastly, we can talk about how this advertisement is appealing to the Australian identity. So it presents or brands the country as an exciting, gift shop, as we saw in the ad copy. So that, I think we can connect it with the concepts of audience rapport and maybe even ethos, credibility. Hey, I'm Australian, you're Australian. Hey, and let me tell you, our country has a lot of good things going for it. Have a look. So this is how I would organize the three major methods through which this advertisement promotes domestic tourism. So with that, I will now move on to the third step of the paper one process, paragraph structuring. So you can see that the 3 points I have outlined here now become a body paragraph point sentence each. So I'm going to start off easy with the visual appeal. And here I'm going to bring in what I said about the background and the foreground. So this is not going to be too hard of a paragraph for me to write, followed by body paragraph 2, where I'm going to talk about how the advertisement appeals to familial values. And I would mention the problem and benefit advertising technique here, and all the stuff I said about the tagline, the expression that the woman is making in the advertisement would go factor into this body paragraph. And then my last point, the appeal to Australian national identity, I would use the ad copy, this line here. And I could also bring in that slogan we mentioned, holiday here this year. And normally for these body paragraphs, I would say aim for 2 good evidence and explanation pairs. Although, if it's very relevant, you can feel free to bring in a third evidence explanation pair in your body paragraph as well. So that's what I'll be doing for that last paragraph. I would also be mentioning the logo and all of the positive connotations about Australia this logo is trying to convey. And with that, all 3 body paragraphs are planned out. I know exactly what I'll be writing for every sentence, and I can now tackle my paper 1 essay with confidence. So that is how I would deal with this paper 1 text. Thank you for watching.